Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID-19. But today, it's also my opportunity to share how angry I am, how frustrated I am with everything that's happened today. And we're going to talk about it. It starts with this tweet from Donald J. Trump. He said, "Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. I feel better than I did 20 years ago." I'm so frustrated and angry by that. And that's why we're going to talk to you all about what happened today and what it means in the next few minutes. You'll be joined by Doug Levy, author of Communications Handbook for Coronavirus and writer of Doug Levy's COVID-19 Daily Stories, something you don't want to miss, a newsletter of daily accurate stories you don't want to miss. DougLevy.substack.com, and he's on Twitter at SFDoug. Hi, everyone. It's Sree, and I can't tell you how angry and upset I am today. Normally on this show, I try to keep it, down, try to stay within the lines of being, upbeat and trying to focus on getting the opinions of my guests and trying to look at everything from a way in which tries to be even-handed, but I cannot be even-handed anymore. I am so upset about what transpired today. Not that with a president who has done so many terrible things in mismanaging this virus, this is just another day in some ways, but this cannot stand. But if we all don't speak up, if we all don't get worked up, if we all don't right now talk about what's happening, we're all going to pay the price. He says, "Don't worry about COVID." I can tell you it was my mother's birthday on Friday, and I'm here and she's in India, and I haven't seen her since February because of Donald Trump. Today is World Teachers Day. My incredible team at Digimentors just spent 24 hours as of 9 p.m. talking and covering a worldwide 5-continent, 6-continent conference about coronavirus and its effect on teachers. And teachers have been hurt so badly. Students have been hurt so badly. And I blame Donald J. Trump. Here is what I wrote when I put this show together. Of all the terrible ways this president and this administration and their enablers have handled this pandemic, this might be the most dangerous. This is also so disrespectful to the families of 200,000 Americans who have died, and millions sickened, and tens of millions left unemployed by this virus. This president was able to leave the hospital on his own terms, having been treated by the best doctors in the world, and he's able to go home because he can, where he has full care. And then from there, if he's unwell, he can go back. For most Americans who don't have health insurance, it means going to the hospital can mean bankruptcy. Going to the hospital can mean the end of all the plans you've had. I am so angry, folks, today. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to share with you a note a widow whose husband died of coronavirus wrote to me. I'm going to share that with you in just a few minutes. I want to hear from you. How has your life been affected by coronavirus? And what were you thinking today as you saw the shenanigans, the awful, awful way in which the president behaved, in the way in which the media fell for everything and covered it like a heroic journey in many ways? I watched Fox for a little bit today and watched as they said, he is showing us that Americans cannot be beaten by this virus. And I want to tell you, America has been beaten by this virus. It's been beaten by this virus because we have lost 200,000 people. We have lost millions of people who lost their jobs, have lost their livelihoods, have lost their hope. Hundreds of thousands of others have been sickened to the point of they might as well have been just one step away from death themselves. I want to tell you that on this show and during this time, I've been interviewing hundreds of people, including dozens and dozens of doctors and experts. And I will never forget one of the doctors in San Antonio, Dr. Monica Gutierrez, who runs a rehab center in San Antonio. And she said that she has patients in her rehab center who have recovered from COVID allegedly. They're off the COVID lists, but they are learning to eat again, walk again, breathe again. And she has people ages from the 20s to their 70s. And to say, don't be afraid of coronavirus, don't be afraid of COVID. In some ways, one of the things you've heard me say over these 6+ months, 208 episodes, I have said that we must laugh because otherwise we will cry. Well, maybe it's time to do some crying and to be angry that this is where we are today. I am going to bring on stage Doug Levy in just a minute and have him talk to me, maybe talk some sense into me, maybe talk me down a little bit. But I'm so angry, folks. And I want you to tag your friends and share this. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn right now. I have talked to the most senior people at the World Health Organization. We did 5 episodes. We did an episode with the director of pandemics at the WHO. We did an episode with the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. I have talked to doctors who have held the hands of dying patients. I have talked to nurses who've held the hands of dying patients. And one man who happens to have recovered, and maybe it's not over yet, for him to say, don't be afraid, don't let this curtail your life. What does he say? What does he say to every other person whose life has been turned upside down? I and my family, we're blessed. So far, we've been okay. I am restricted to my apartment in New York. I am blessed, but it has turned my life upside down. But that's not why I'm angry. I'm angry for everyone else. I'm angry for the opportunities that people have lost. The lost year of the students, the lost year of family members, and we have just nothing to show for it. The fact that we're still at 40,000 sick people a day, new cases a day, after 200 days is so awful. 1,000 people are dying a day. And we are now being told that don't be afraid of coronavirus. On television today on CNN, Gloria Borger spoke to someone who spoke to the president today. And he's now going to go on the road and say to everyone that, look, I conquered coronavirus, and now I'm going to conquer it for you also the same way. And that message may actually work. Earlier today, I posted that I have been saying that Donald Trump will be the first person in history to claim to benefit from getting COVID. He's already doing this. He's already saying that he has benefited from getting COVID, that he knows more now about COVID than anyone else. And look, Joe Biden doesn't have this great experience that he has. Imagine if it had been Joe Biden who had gotten corona and what he would have said about that. I am so angry, folks, but I don't want to just subject you to my anger. I want you to hear from anyone who wants to chip in, jump in, post something. I will read your comments. I have Doug Levy with me here today. Doug, who has been on the show before, who worked at a medical center and communications, who's written a book on coronavirus. He wrote that within the first 60 days, who has been covering corona every single day, and who teaches people how to communicate in official capacity. I bet, before he comes on, I want to say this, and you can see what he says after, that if the president was, if a low-level communications officer in any government in the world communicated the way this president does, that person would be fired about this disease. And that's who we have here. I am a journalist, as you know, and I believe in the code that journalists shouldn't be completely, have that inject their own biases into things. But this is not about political bias. This is not about bias of any kind. This is about cold, hard facts. And let me remind you what they are. This virus would have killed thousands of people in America. That's a given. But it wouldn't have killed this many. The lockdowns wouldn't have been this long. The pain wouldn't have been this much if it weren't for this president who was not ready for us to help us, was not ready to help us and make a difference. Instead, he hurt us along the way. But I also blame his enablers. Not one major Republican resignation, nobody on his staff was resigned and over this and saying this is unacceptable. A few people have stepped down, but no one who has the gravitas or the media recognition to make that difference. And look at what I've always said is don't look at the small countries alone, such as Singapore that have done a good job or other countries. Look at Germany, which didn't have the best reaction to coronavirus, but they lost 9,000 people. So let's say 10,000 people, multiply that by 4. America should have lost 40,000 people. Instead, America, which is 5% of the world's population, had 20 to 25%, depending on when you count, of the world's dead bodies out of this story. It is so unacceptable, but we have all accepted it, including me, including on this show. I have accepted it. Before I bring Doug onto the screen here, I am just going to read some of these comments here and see what people are saying. Pradnya says, we're angry too, Sree. Thank you for your openness and for giving us all a platform for use purposeful dialogue. Thank you, Pradnya. Everyone, tag your friends. Let's have a conversation. What can we do? I believe that if this country re-elects this president at this moment, that we will all be in mortal danger. It sounds hyperbolic. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds impossible. How can you, one of the things that Brian Stelter, whose book is right here, I thought it was behind me, his book Hoax, he wrote a wonderful column. By the way, I got the book today. I already had it on Kindle, but I got it because I want this book to be in my collection of books that I want to keep. It is such a meaningful and important book. And what he said is that Chris Wallace and others didn't imagine that the president would talk over and ruin that debate in the way he did. And he said, it's because America and all of us have lacked the imagination, that we have to imagine the worst about this president. Otherwise, we are not going to survive. Not just because of the virus, but as you know, the dangers that we are going to face over the environment and climate change. We are almost at the brink of the planetary point of no return. That's going to happen if this president is reelected. And immigrants will not be able to get here. They don't want immigrants. They've told us. I interviewed Jean Guerrero, who wrote the book Hate Monger, about this president and Stephen Miller. They don't want immigrants. But I hear people in my own community who are voting for this president, who don't understand because they don't imagine how bad it can get and how bad it already is. Please tell your friends to watch tonight. Please tell your friends to comment. I'm going to read your comments. We're going to stay here as long as it takes. But I am so angry and so upset with everything that's going on. And I can't tell you how important it is for me to have you all here. And I'm so grateful for this platform and to have it and to have built it over 200 days and be with you tonight. I am so angry, as I've said more than once. Let me bring Doug Levy on. Doug is a dear friend who I've known for many years. He's at SF Doug. He is coming to us from a place that's on fire. And this president has said nothing, has done nothing but blame Californians for it. And there are so many other things that are in danger if this president gets reelected. Doug Levy, at SF Doug. Please subscribe today to douglevy.substack.com and get his incredible newsletter. Let me bring Doug on. And Doug is here partly to talk me down. and calm me down and make me less angry. I don't know if you can, Doug. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi. How are you feeling?
You have no idea, right? I've not been saying anything. It's the usual day at the office today.
It's hard, and for those of us who have, as you said, I've been in a couple of different roles. When I was a medical center communications person, I actually have been in the team planning for pandemic response. I've been a reporter covering pandemics. I've been advising emergency responders and hospital companies and so on. I don't think any of us had ever imagined that we would have a president who is actively working against the public health. And it is a very disturbing, distressing situation. What I would like us to focus on, though, is what we can do about it. Obviously, voting is important, and that goes, well, it should go without saying, but we need to say it. I will leave that to others. Let's focus on the realities of where we are with the pandemic. And I hadn't picked up my book in a while, and I did anticipate some of this, but I had not imagined it would be quite as bad. But back in March when I wrote this, one of the things that I included here is the source of communication, not where the science was done, but who conveys it, has the greatest impact on message penetration. It only takes one loud person with a big audience to undercut every public health message. That's what we're seeing. The antidote is facts and resistance to the disinformation. And as I've been trying to tell people going back now several months, because we have this credibility problem, because of the political interference, we have to read everything from the CDC, the FDA, even NIH, and definitely the White House. We have to judge it before we accept it. And unfortunately, more and more, we're seeing that what comes out from the official channels doesn't stand up to scrutiny. You know, we certainly saw that over the weekend. I mean, anybody who listened to the briefing by the president's doctor on Saturday knew that that could not possibly have been truthful. I used to be an EMT, and you know, just with the basic EMT skills, I knew that the way he was describing the president's oxygen situation just did not make sense. And he had to correct that the next day. So, facts. First of all, you know, think twice before you react to something. You know, pay attention to multiple sources. Don't get all of your news from one place, whether it's Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, the BBC, anything else. Diversify your sources of information and figure out who the trusted experts really are. Folks like Michael Osterholm from the University of Minnesota, Tom Frieden, who used to be the head of the CDC. There are Ashish Jha at Boston University, Brown University, rather. We have amazing scientists who are literally among the world's leaders. Tony Fauci is absolutely among them. Listen to what they are saying, but try to listen to more than one expert as you're trying to make your decisions. And with that, here's a couple things we know. We don't have a vaccine. Doctors have gotten better at treating people who are sick, but it's not a curable disease. It does kill people, and even those who survive, in many cases, have long-term consequences. I know people who were sick in March and are still struggling to resume normal activity. So I'm not going to say people should be afraid of it, but you don't want this infection. Avoid it. Keep your distance. Cover your face. Avoid meetings or anything else indoors. That's where the risk is. It's that simple.
Doug, thank you for sharing. Read that sentence again about what you said. I think everybody should know what you just wrote is so important for all of us.
I can't remember which page it was on, but it basically is, it doesn't matter where the science is being done. What matters is who do people listen to? It only takes one very loud person or one person with a very big audience to give the wrong information to undercut all the public health messages. And where those of us like me who plan and prepare for pandemics and other emergencies failed to imagine, we never imagined that we would literally have a president who is counter messaging, who is actively campaigning against public health. It's disturbing, it's depressing, but that's the reality. So you have to tune him out, which sucks. But and I'm going to add one more thing. We not only have to tune the president out, but we also have to stay away from him. The CDC has guidelines on what to do if you've been exposed to somebody who is a confirmed COVID positive person. And thing number one is don't travel. Isolate 14 days. That's if you don't have any symptoms. If you have symptoms, you need to not be around other people, period. The White House medical team said that the Secret Service and the other folks that were around the president had full PPE. No, they didn't.
No.
Full PPE is not just a mask.
And by the way, he says he now knows more about coronavirus. He walks into the White House, first thing he does, remove the mask, and goes into a place where there are people who have been diagnosed with coronavirus, and there are people who work there. But he doesn't care about any of these people. I mean, that's the point. Again, we lack the imagination to think about this president and what he would do. Another way I think about this, Doug, is what if this were a alien invasion? This president would be telling us not to worry about the aliens. I mean, it's because it's an invisible enemy that he is able to manipulate and do it this way. What if it was some kind of, visible enemy, some kind of, super bees or something that was going around attacking people and killing them?
I would bet he'd deny that too, honestly. Yeah. And in fact, I mean, if we want to get political, he has denied, actual threats and attacks, whether it's cyber attacks or the bounty on U.S. service members and so on. I mean, that's who got into the Oval Office, and hopefully there'll be a change. But
by the way, can I just say, don't count on it. For everybody who says Biden's ahead in the polls, because of the total crazy amount of disinformation and misinformation that this president has spread, and the attacks he has made on polling and mail-in balloting, and just minutes before we went on the air, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Republicans in, I think in North or South Carolina, about mail-in balloting, and you need signature verification or anything to make it more complicated for people to vote, right? Like, all of that means this is not a level playing field. That's right. So anybody who thinks Biden has this in the bag is going to wake up like we did on the day after the elections in 2016, except this time it's not going to be the day after. It's going to take maybe days or weeks before we know what actually happened. Well, and then on top of that, I'm sorry, I also want to say we're going to have our Russian friends and others get involved in actively sabotaging the elections. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, the vote suppression thing is very, very real. We've seen not only litigation to limit where people can vote, where people can drop their ballots off. I believe it was in Texas, Governor Abbott was using the coronavirus emergency as justification to shut down most of the places where the absentee ballots were allowed to be dropped off. And he literally was making it that people might have to drive hours to drop off their absentee ballot, using coronavirus as the justification, which is backwards, but that's how this works. It's a very, very significant problem, and it's a threat to our democracy. There's also the issue of Trump keeps asking his army, that's a term that his campaign has been using, to go to the polls and watch. Well, armed people at polling places are not allowed. Police officers are in most places not permitted to be inside polling places. We're going to have issues, and it's alarming. But each of us has to do what we can, which means start by protecting yourself any way that you feel like you can. And one thing that you have within your control is the ability to protect yourself from other people and to protect other people from you. So just, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in a rural location or in the middle of New York City, wear a mask. It's a simple thing. It's not foolproof. There are many, many, many people who have gotten sick or even died from COVID-19, even having worn protective gear, masks, and in some cases, masks or more. We've had over 900 healthcare workers in the United States dead from COVID-19. Most of those were wearing some degree of protective gear, but we haven't had enough of it because the supply chain's been completely messed up for political reasons, sadly. But wear a cloth face covering. Cloth face coverings are fine. Not a thin bandana, but a couple of layers will at least reduce the amount of virus that gets in if somebody near you is infected. Don't go to meetings indoors. It's that indoor space. And this is what's alarming, because we're going to have colder weather soon. People are going to be indoors. The CDC finally updated their guidelines today, actually. They published new scientific data that, it basically says what we've known now since the spring. People can get COVID-19, not so much from handling a package, but mostly from droplets that, in some cases, travel across a room. 6 feet's not enough if it's indoors. The danger's everywhere. And Sree, I'm not hearing you.
Right, that's on me. There's so much that we need to talk about. As I keep saying, I'm so upset, Doug. One of the things that I'm going to do is read a note that a widow whose husband died in this pandemic has written to me and gave me permission to read on the air. And I'm going to read that in just a minute, but I want to read some of these comments that have come here. And Doug, I am so upset about what's happening in California. And if we don't get back in the Paris Agreement and take care of our environment, we're going to have climate refugees in this country. And we're seeing some of the worst fires in history. You know, your name, your Twitter handle is SF Doug, so you know California, and you can tell us that this is not what California. There've always been fires, but not like this.
No. I was actually up in Mendocino County and Sonoma County last week, so I didn't get very close to the big fires, but I got to see the impact. And of course, the smoke has been coming all the way into San Francisco. And we are, it only takes a minor difference in the ocean temperature to completely change weather patterns and wind patterns, and that's why this is happening. And the NASA scientist who first published on the ozone hole back in the 1980s, when I was actually a budding science reporter, his predictions, sadly, are true. 60 Minutes did a great piece yesterday reviewing those papers from the 1980s. And unfortunately, we have done hardly anything to address it, and it is only going to get worse. But, the president sat with the head of California's Natural Resources Agency, and when told that the science tells us what we need to do, Trump's response was, science doesn't know.
And by the way, this news broke today. Exxon's plan for surging carbon emissions revealed in leaked documents. By the way, this is also why we need journalists and we need journalism. This is really, look at this story. It's a time when people are saying one thing publicly and then doing terrible things like this. But we don't even have time to get into that because there's so many horrible things happening. Let's say hello to other people. Jonathan's watching from the East Village. Diana is watching from the SF Bay Area. And Jonathan says, your newsletter is great. So everyone, please subscribe to douglevy.substack.com. Mine is sreenet.substack.com. Diana says, it's okay to be angry. I'm upbeat most of the time, but it's time to get upset. Agreed.
I think the difference is that we want people to be upset, but we want people to take forward action. So don't just be mad, do something.
Yeah, but that's absolutely right. Rajika says, so good to hear you and championing all those who are keeping the society good, teachers, healthcare workers, essential workers, and calling out all that it seems rich Republicans don't care a fig about. Pradnya said, I read some of the comments on Donald Trump's Facebook post. People genuinely think he was saved and view him as a hero. I don't understand how it's possible to be so divorced from your reality. Ashok says, we feel really annoyed and frustrated about the behavior of the US president. He's in Kerala. Ashok is a wonderful viewer of this show who's lost his wife this year at the beginning of the year. And then he would be with us every day. And he said this show was a benefit to him. It was a benefit to me to have folks like him with us, Doug. And then he himself tested positive with his daughter, and then they had to quarantine. They're okay now. And this is what people don't understand, that things that happen, the president does, has a global set of implications. And that's what's so problematic. Bharati says, I'm from India, and we are shocked to say the least about this drama. We're staying at home, afraid to step out. And here's a president, supposedly of the most powerful country, behaving so irresponsibly. Shame. Thank you, Bharati. Thank you for saying that. Rajika says, but what makes him immune, obese and elderly as he is? And this is what he's always managed to do, whether it's fight off the war. I mean, remember I think we were up to the point yet where in this election cycle, 2016, the tapes hadn't come out yet. The WikiLeaks hadn't dropped yet. All of those things have yet to happen. And he still survived all of that. I remember when the tape came out, the terrible tape about what was, about the Hollywood tape about grabbing women's genitalia. I thought that was it. It was over. I was wrong. When he made fun of that reporter months earlier, the disabled reporter, when he made fun of John McCain, I thought it was over. So he's able to fight off coronavirus the same way because he has the luck of the devil.
It's not just the luck of the devil. Remember the timeline. A few hours after the Access Hollywood tape was released, that's when the Russian intelligence agency started dropping the WikiLeaks documents. And that shifted things. So watch carefully what's happening now. A week ago, we had the New York Times blockbuster on Trump's taxes, revealing that he paid $750 in income tax.
You paid more than that. So
I pay more than that in a week, and I don't make that much. That's infuriating. Then he had the very strange performance, whatever it was, at the debate. Well, shifted gears, changed the headlines. Nobody's been talking about his taxes. Nobody's been talking about the debate. And now we're also not talking, for the most part, the headlines are not about how inept the Trump White House has been on responding to the coronavirus. And particularly if you're looking at the right-wing media and the people that will just not believe the reality, they're seeing something completely different. I do want to make one really important point about Trump's actual medical condition. Now, I'm not a doctor, so this is journalist observation here. But the most serious consequences of COVID-19 almost always happen after the first week, usually between days 8 and 15 of the infection. If Trump was infected last Saturday, a week ago Saturday, he's just entering that period now. We know that he had symptoms on Thursday. We know that he had significant oxygen depletion Friday, and it's unclear whether that happened again on Saturday. But something happened that prompted the doctors to add the steroid medicine to him. That's a drug that is not given unless there is a significant risk of serious lung impairment. It's also, we've seen many, many times that the condition of COVID patients changes rapidly. So people can be seemingly fine and then 12 hours later be in the ICU. I hope that President Trump does great. I do not want anybody to be sick, but he is not, I don't want to use the cliche of out of the woods, but he's in the most vulnerable period right now. And he's got the best medical care in the world. No question about it. The prognosis for him is fabulous, but it's not he's not recovered. It's not that it's done.
You're right.
And he's still almost certainly infectious.
And that's another, so many good points you made there, Doug. And one of them that I want to emphasize to everyone who's listening is that we as media, as journalists, shouldn't take our eye off the entire story here. One of the reasons he was so happy to have the Amy Coney Barrett story and the nomination was because it was eyes off the taxes, right? And about coronavirus. So every day that it was about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's successor was a victory for him. And now look at this. And that this Senate, this is why you have to blame the enablers as well. Mitch McConnell and all the senators who are going along with this, right? Even Mitt Romney, who people were giving great credit to, he has said he would vote for Barrett. In the middle of this, 3 senators are sick, and they're going to go ahead with this, and it's going to have an impact on America's future. And this is what is so frustrating. So I'm now going to read out loud a letter written to me by a lady whose husband died of coronavirus, and she gave me permission to read this out to all of you. Having lost my husband to COVID and feeling the ripple effects that it has had on our entire family. Having lost my husband to COVID and feeling the ripple effects that has had on our entire family, I'm appalled that this president is so callous and irresponsible to how many lives he's potentially jeopardizing by his actions. Lives will be forever changed by his narcissistic behavior, not just by him exposing people around him, but by sending out the wrong message to our country to not take this virus seriously. He's a disgrace not only to the office of the president, but to humanity and mankind. Please listen to the voice of one person whose husband died. There are 200,000 people, and that's just in America, 200,000 people whose families like that. And to say that anyone can beat COVID, I'm going to read that tweet again, even though it makes me angry every time I read it. I'll be leaving the Great Walter Reed Hospital at 6:30 feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago. Many, many people who have had steroids, which is what he got, will tell you that immediately after you feel good. You feel strong. That doesn't mean you're better than you were 20 years ago. That is so ridiculous And no one is calling him out on this. No one of consequence who people will believe. And that's what's so upsetting. Doug, what do you say to the widow and to everyone else who's in that same position? You worked in a communications role in a medical center where, of course, your colleague saved thousands of lives, but people died, and you can't save everybody. Communication and empathy is one of the roles that the president is supposed to play. Instead, he's hurting people like her.
One of the things that we've taught physicians and others to do is to be truthful. Physicians are proud to say they are scientists who practice the art of healing. And I think for most physicians that is true. And part of the art is being able to convey information that sometimes people don't want to hear. Our elected leaders sometimes are thrust into that role as well, and many of them have risen to the occasion to comfort people when something bad has happened, or to tell people what to do to stay safe. And that's kind of the most important thing. If there's a threat to lives and you're in a position of authority, tell people what the threat is and how to stay safe from it. Ignoring it does not make it go away. The best way we can honor those who have been lost is to do better every day going forward, which means follow the facts, follow the science, and just don't get swept up into the disinformation. If you run into somebody who tells you that this is all a hoax, just walk away. Just walk away. Keep your distance from that person because you're probably not safe. But just focus on people who are willing to keep themselves safe. Similar to when there's a fire. I was listening on the scanner when the sheriff's department in Napa County was going door to door in the middle of the night to get people out of their homes as the fire that's now destroyed hundreds of homes in Napa and Sonoma had started. And there were some people who did not want to leave. Well, it's very difficult for first responders to leave them to potentially die, but that's what has to happen, because if you focus your energy on somebody that doesn't want to be safe, don't fight. Just move on and save somebody who cares, somebody who's going to actually honor you too.
Thank you, Doug. Folks, I want to hear from you. I want you to share this conversation with your friends and family. If you're joining late into the conversation, you should know that I am really angry today. For those of you who've known me for 20 years or more, you know that as a journalist, I try to be on the straight and narrow path of trying to do the whataboutisms and the both-siderisms and all of that. But there is no other side to this. This president is a super spreader of coronavirus and a super spreader of disinformation. This president is responsible for the death of at least 100,000 people in this country. This president and the Republican governors, not all Republican governors, right? The Republican governor of Maryland, for example, has done well. But the Republican governors who did things like, Doug knows this, the mayor of Atlanta was issuing mask mandates, and he was suing her. The Republican governor was suing her to stop the mask mandates. How much could you hate masks that you would override the mask mandate that is in one of your great cities? If you're willing to kill people, Brian Stelter said, if there were 1,000 people dying from plane crashes every day, would we wait 200 days and still just let it happen? What would we do? We'd stop flying. We would have the world's best railroad system suddenly in place, right? Amtrak would get $1 trillion handed to it, and you say, go fix the trains, right? But that is not what's happening, even though the 1,000 deaths are happening. And Doug, you know this because you've been a guest on my radio show, where we have a call-in radio show in New York on a progressive radio station, WBAI. And occasionally we get people who call from the extreme left and extreme right who call in and say, this is a hoax. Don't believe it. It's the common flu. It's this, it's that. And I get so mad at them. But what I was trying to say about me being a journalist, I can still be a journalist, but if you want to call me an opinion journalist, fine. But I am a journalist who believes in facts and believes in science. As someone said to us the other day on one of these shows, said to me, you know, if someone punched you in the nose, you wouldn't then, if you were reporting this, you wouldn't like try to come up with, well, who else did he, you know, what did you do wrong? You would feel so angry, especially if you didn't do anything. And that's what I feel has happened to this country. We've been punched. We've been kicked by this president. And we are in pain. And 200,000 people have died. You heard the voice, you heard the pain in the voice of the woman who lost her husband. That's what's happening 200,000 times. There are also people who didn't get COVID, whose families did not die of COVID, but who died alone because of COVID, right? You know that there were people who, I know multiple people whose parents or grandparents died, and not because of COVID, but they were not allowed there because that's just the situation, the funerals and everything, just so horrendous. And why I am so angry today. Doug, let's read some more comments, and then I want to come to you.
One of the comments was about the steroids and how that causes paranoia and all kinds of other side effects. And it's like, that's...
How would we know, Doug? How would we know? He is already paranoid. He's already angry. He's, you know, again, I'm laughing because if I don't laugh, I'll cry because that's how ridiculous the situation is.
And all of this makes the pain prolonged because the longer it takes for us to actually do what it takes to stop the spread, the harder it's going to be to spread and the more economic pain we have. 34 states right now have more new cases this week than they had a month ago.
Say that again, please.
34 states right now are trending up.
Oklahoma recently had one of the worst days of all the states have ever had in the last 6 months. We're in Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. And how much of that could be tied to all those rallies and everything that President Trump did? We know it killed Herman Cain, who, by the way, in his timeline posted he's feeling better, he's doing well, I'm going home, and then he dies.
Now, there are communities that have done fine, that have done well. Particularly, you've got some rural communities where people have been reasonably cautious. They're socially distant because they live far apart. The problem is we are a very mobile society. And if you look at the cell phone traffic, you can actually see how the more people move from one place to another, whether it's by air, by car, any other way, that's how these spikes occur. There is no place in the United States now that is free of COVID-19. It is community spreading everywhere. So until we accept that and deal with it and act as if every one of us has it, it will continue to be this horrendous problem.
One of the things I'll say, Doug, that what kept me from being, I mean, somebody could say very honestly to me, Sree, why weren't you this angry earlier? Why did you wait till tonight, 209 days? And I would say that part of it is, you know, if you are seen as somebody constantly angry, people don't listen to you, right? If you're seen as somebody, you know, you'll be accused of being too political. You'll be accused of this. And as you know, I'm a consultant. I have a business. I have a company where we get hired to do things. You want to be a little careful about what you say, right? You know, from the social media workshops we've taught together, what do I say? Take 5, 6, 10 minutes, craft every tweet you write, because you could lose your job in one day. You could get divorced in one day from one tweet. So I was careful because I was worried about who I would get angry. Now I don't care anymore because now I'm doing this I'm saying this and being as clear as I possibly can to everyone who's listening. And I know I have more influence, if perhaps in some pockets more than others, but I'm really upset about my own community, the South Asian community that has fallen for this idea that the taxes are great, the tax cuts are great for all of us. This is a man who doesn't pay taxes. That this man is going to be good for the community. He doesn't like us. He doesn't like us. He has made it clear he'd rather have a Norwegian fisherman than an Indian doctor, an Indian engineer. And then you meet these Indian engineers who say Trump is wonderful, and they don't get it. You know, Doug, that this country is filled with systemic racism, right? We saw it throughout its history that this is a country built on racism, and there's so much pain that people feel every day. And these people who are somewhat successful at the moment are feeling like, oh, this will be great. This doesn't affect us. Well, if this president gets reelected, we can see what would happen to people like us. It sounds ridiculous. Sounds like you're talking about a fascist country. This president is a neo-fascist. But he doesn't know enough he hasn't studied any history, so he doesn't know any of it, right? It's like he's the accidental fascist, but he's a white supremacist because it will get him votes. And that's what's happening. And that's what's so upsetting.
It's that simple. He's got easy answers that are not true. I mean, he said he's got a new healthcare plan. The executive orders that he signed 2 weeks ago literally are fake. They do nothing. Zero. I mean, read the documents. But it sounds good. And there are people that want those easy answers. I live in the liberal bubble of San Francisco, and I've had people walk up to me when I'm walking around with a mask on saying, you don't need to wear that. That's just all a hoax.
In San Francisco,
yeah,
most liberal place.
I've had 2 encounters like that in the last 3 weeks. And I don't go out much, so that actually...
Yeah, I know you don't. Here's a scoop from Apurva Mandavili in the New York Times, a friend of mine. The White House has decided not to trace the contacts and guests of staff members of the Rose Garden celebration for Judge Amy Coney Barrett, where at least 8 people, including the president, likely were infected. And that's her family there and friends. Just imagine that you're putting all of them in danger. The reason they're not worried about the judge is that she had coronavirus over the summer, as I understand it. And look at this. Trump irresponsibly continues downplaying the virus that put him in the hospital. It's still not real to him, right?
By the way, people who have been infected are not necessarily free of the virus.
Great point. At least some Americans look at that. 3 in 4 Americans say they're now always wear a mask. I hope they're right. And I hope
we get to 90%, we can save 80,000 lives by the end of the year. It's that.
Say that again.
If we get closer to about 90%,
mm-hmm.
The University of Washington forecasters estimate that we could probably save as many as 80,000 lives between now and January 1.
Is that worth it, folks? Wear a goddamn mask. You'd help save 80,000 lives. I posted this tweet today because I was laughing. The way this came in my inbox, Trump says he's leaving, was that middle tweet there, as you can see from NBC News. And for a moment, you could only dream of what this can do. This is not a fear of Mike Pence. This is about this administration, folks, and what it is doing to all of us. I've been telling people that Trump will be the first person to claim to benefit from getting COVID, and now he's saying it's a youth elixir, is what Karen Tumulty posted. And let's keep going here. Maggie Haberman said the president had wanted to be discharged from the Walter Reed yesterday. The doctors weren't okay with it, so that car ride became the compromise. And S.V. Date, who was on this show, is a White House correspondent for the Huffington Post, said, when older kid was a baby, sometimes we put him in his car seat on top of the dryer. Maybe we can try that next time. Again, humor helps, Doug, because otherwise we would be crying. Just a reminder that the candidate who now has a pre-existing condition wants to destroy protections of pre-existing conditions. It's in front of the Supreme Court about pre-existing conditions. He's against them, and that is part of the absolute nonsense. And look at this. I'd be heck of a lot angrier than this journalist who was Michael Shear got COVID by traveling with the president. There's been zero outreach, no contact tracing at all.
And
Doug, if this was a church that didn't do the contact tracing, journalists would be angry at the church for not doing it, right? And here the White House is not doing the outreach. Go ahead.
I think it's now 4 members of the press corps have tested positive. And the number of White House staffers, it was more than 8 at last count. I think it's probably well over that. You know, the White House is now the site of one of the biggest outbreaks traced to one specific location.
Exactly. I also just want to give a plug for our show on Friday night. Marva Hinton's going to be here, and she's talking about, as someone who vividly remembers flesh-colored crayons, bandages, and nude pantyhose that would never match my reality. This hurts. This talks about just the problem with racism in this country. I mean, that's one of the things we talk about on the show all the time. This president is racist, people. It is really problematic that we are all in this way. By the way, this Supreme Court today rejected an appeal of a case about same-sex marriage, but in the dissent, Alito and Thomas, two of the most conservative judges, wrote that this needs to be overturned by the Supreme Court. So those of you who think marriage equality is a good idea, and you think it's the law of the land, that it's settled, it is not settled. Anytime this can change. And that's what we're seeing here. And today it got lost in everything else because that's what's happening. And people aren't paying attention. And you may not be someone who cares about this, but there's your rights and everyone's rights are in danger. And I can tell you that. And here are 2 tweets from yesterday. Both of them turned out to be accurate. What Maggie Haberman reported, some right-wing guy said, "You're full of shit." And Bernie Kerik, you remember him? Terrible, terrible man. Rudy Giuliani's best friend, nominated to be Homeland Security, but went to prison himself. He accused Jim Acosta of being full of shit. Both these facts turned out to be, in fact, facts. And that's the world we're living in now, folks. And Sanjay Gupta, you know, this president lied to Sanjay in, I think it was February 14th when they had a press conference, and lied to his face. And we know that because of the Bob Woodward tapes, right? Nobody's talking about Bob Woodward anymore because that has all changed and gone because of what is happening. And this is, I could just keep going and going and going. And by the way, elections have started in this country. It's not like the elections are, whatever it is, 33 days away, or 30, today's the 5th, so 28 days away, something like that, right? Hey, Alexa, how many days till November 3rd?
29.
November 3rd, 2020 is in 29 days.
29 days. You're faster than Alexa. Well done. And the elections have started, folks. This is the time to tell your family, to reach out to your family, your friends, and make them vote. And this is to save this country. This is to save this planet.
Absentee, make sure you follow the rules exactly right. One of the, I believe it was one of the court decisions that was upheld today, but this is happening in every state, is the Republicans are finding ways to disqualify absentee ballots. So you need to make sure that if it's a 2-envelope system, you have exactly the right envelopes in the right sequence, signed where they're supposed to be signed, not signed where they're not supposed to be signed. The rules are complicated by design.
I can tell you, Doug, I mean, I'm so angry, but I joked around in March that if this lasts till November, the Republicans won't believe it and will go out to vote. Democrats will stay indoors and try to stay alive. And that's exactly where we are today. I was joking in March, and today we're in November, 200 days later. I am so angry. Let's read some of these comments. Deborah says, I think it's a pivotal hoaxes. He lied took advantage of those that had coronavirus. I spoke to a friend tonight who lost both parents, an aunt and his mother-in-law, all within the last 4 months. Don't be afraid, be angry. Thank you. So important. Look at this comment from Alexandria, Virginia. Lock Trump up. I support what you do. Keep it up. Thank you. I appreciate it. He took off his mask and went into the White House. Awful.
The mask
here, says Rosalie.
Outside.
Sorry, say that again?
If you're indoors with people you don't live with, the mask is more important there than outside.
And now doctors say the virus can be airborne too. And that means it isn't just the surface, right?
The CDC updated their guidelines today with a lot more detail. Again, this is something that the scientific community had pretty much agreed to come to a consensus on in June or before. But don't worry about washing your packages and stuff like that. You do need to keep your hands clean and wash them frequently and use sanitizer, whatever. But the real risk is when you are in the same vicinity as somebody else who's infected. Indoors is where the risk is highest. Outdoors, if you're shouting, singing, or exercising, 30 minutes in the vicinity, could be more than 6 feet, of somebody else who's infected, you are putting yourself at high risk. Wear a mask.
Wear a mask, people. Please wear a mask. Elizabeth Samuel says, when he said, don't let it dominate your life as though it's a choice, I'm not letting it dominate my life. It's just happening to me. I've lost so much because of COVID, and to hear him talk about it like it's nothing. I've never been so mad, felt so much rage at someone I don't actually know. Elizabeth, we're right there with you. Rachna says, please keep being angry. Make everyone who hears you join you with their anger. Stefan says, Sree and Doug, we're all responsible for what happens next in this hot mess. So everyone vote. And Maureen says, it doesn't sound ridiculous at all. No, not hyperbolic or ridiculous. We should be afraid. We need to channel that fear into meaningful action. That's what you said, Doug. What is the next steps? You said. Before we go, I'm going to ask you to go through those steps again. The environment has already been impacted. Our civil liberties are already under attack. Ram says the only hope left is that everyone go out and vote in person and return a significant Democratic Senate and a Biden-Harris White House. Maureen says, me too, angry, sad, hopping mad. We need to do more than vote. Doug Levy, you said it right, face reality. Ashok says the CDC says that the virus can be airborne also now. My dad is watching in India. We share your anger and pain and frustration at the recklessness of the president. And I can tell you that again, it's my pain is not being with my parents, not being able to see my kid brother, he's not a kid anymore, or his kid, or to have my children locked down at 17, right? Doug, you remember 17. How would you have taken turning 17, being locked in a Manhattan apartment? You would not have taken it well, I know you. I would not have taken it well. I was in Fiji as a high school student. I would have hated it. My children have taken it so well in comparison. I listened to Dr. Fauci. So many comments coming in. He only sees himself as a hero when he's actually a zero. Houston went from 12 drop-off sites to 1. And if anyone's been to Houston, it is a big city. I mean, that's spread out, huge.
That's the Texas order that the governor imposed, where he's limited each county to 1 drop-off site.
I understand why people are feeling so angry, but as a family physician, I come from a position of compassion. I feel indifferent towards him. Trump cannot help himself. He's a pathetic human being. Let's put our emotional energy into voting him out. But it's not, we need a landslide. Otherwise, there's going to be, he'll contest every single thing if it's not a landslide.
And your state lawmakers matter too. Don't forget the other races on the ballot, because your state legislature could actually have an impact on the outcome of the presidential election if it's a real mess. Yeah,
and by the way, if you're a Republican and you can't make yourself to trust any of this, just go to the Lincoln Project and see it's full of Republicans who are now talking about the truth and are so angry at Trump. There's so much to be read and seen, and it's send those to your Republican friends who don't understand. It will help. Thank you for noting that the message of Biden being ahead in the polls has significant consequences. And by the way, the trolls are here. There are people who are saying LMA, laughing their asses off. They're saying, that Trump 2020. Ram says it's depressing to talk about all he's doing and how bad he is. What can we do, the people, to change the outcome is what I would like to know. And we're going to get some concrete suggestions from Doug in just a minute. Rick says Trump has fake patriotic personality disorder, megalomania, narcissism. He has executive brain dysfunction and a leadership disability. So he's written about this. So check out what Rick has written. Ravi's watching from Bangalore, India. I feel bad for all my India friends who woken up to have me yelling at them. Craig said, I need this tonight. Thank you, Sree and Doug. Trump only knows how to bully. He's one-trick pony. The bullying will get predictably worse. He has our money, our taxes, and the best care and top-of-the-line drugs, things that aren't approved, right? Things that if I got sick today, I would not get, he got. And he's telling me not to be afraid of coronavirus. So many other comments. Stefan says, the fact that this narcissistic certifiable individual went for a joyride, put Secret Service agents at risk, is sickening. That vehicle is airtight to withstand chemical attacks, so the air is recirculated. He cares about no one but himself, no one. And Stefan's mom was a police officer in New York City, so he understands what those people who do protection, what they're doing. Rose says, one of our wonderful producers says, Dr. John LaPook at CBS said, Trump must have pneumonia. All doctors are saying someone taking the drugs he's taking would be in the hospital at least 10 days. He's definitely infectious. My mom is watching. Hi, Amma. Love you. I'm sorry I'm not with you. I love you so much. And I'm angry in part for you because I know you want to be with your grandchildren, not just your 17-year-olds, but the younger grandson as well. You want to see them. You want to see me. And this is a wasted year. And that's what's so frustrating. Rose said, a media setup tonight. He walked out of Walter Reed in time for all the networks to cover it in prime time in the night of Biden's town hall on MSNBC. 100% Rose. 6:30 was not a coincidence. For non-Americans, you want to understand the value of 6:30. It's Eastern time, 6:30, and then at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, they rerun the news, and everybody carried it live on ABC, CBS, and NBC. And so many other comments coming in here. Somebody says, don't be afraid. And Ashok says, my wife had heavy doses of steroids and immunosuppressants for over 8 years for her kidney disease. She became hypertensive and diabetic due to this medication, and that's what will affect you as well. Linda says, I've been on steroids. They boosted my energy. I do crazy things like scrub the bathtub in the middle of the night. No chance this man is doing this. He's done not a day's worth of work in his life. And that's where we are. Well said. There is no other side to this exactly. And again, I would like your opinion on this podcast and analysis. If it's true that the only hope is to return a Democratic Senate and White House with a significant majority on November 3rd, so that even with all the mail-in ballots, Trump would still lose. I think that is right. One of the people that I got a postcard from, again, I am focusing my attention on the Indian community. And I want to tell you about this lady who I know that Doug will know who she is, but not everybody else will. This is Sarah Gideon, and her name should be a household name. Sarah is running against Susan Collins in Maine. And Susan Collins, who has claimed to be a friend of women, claimed to be holding Trump's feet to the fire, has done nothing like that. So I donated to her, and they sent me this nice postcard. That's her family. And by the way, Sarah Gideon's father from India, so an Indian American, has a shot at helping move the Senate and make it a place that can have an impact and save us from this president. That's why the Senate is almost as important, if not more important. Even if Trump wins, if you swing the Senate, then there's so much less damage he can do. And this is where we are. This Sunday, folks, I interviewed this man, Andy Rosenthal, who is a New York Times journalist, who was the editorial page editor. And he said that until Barack Obama, he had always voted against someone else. And Barack Obama was the first time he voted for somebody. And he wishes that we could be a country where we could vote again have that same feeling we had with Barack Obama. And I feel the same way too. Go back and listen to that. It's in my archives, youtube.com/Sreenet. You can see my archives and watch that entire episode. So Doug, before we let you go, I know it's been a long evening. Please share with us concrete things we can do about health, about politics, about information. And I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, Doug.
It's okay. And I had to adjust my lights because the sun has gone down while we've been on. We started out with sunlight, which is great. So yes, this is a time to channel our energy, our anger, our rage, whatever you're feeling, channel it into something practical. So there's a couple things. First, start with your own personal safety. Are you safe? How can you make yourself safer? How can you take care of the people you love and the people around you, the people you live with, the people you work with? Universal precautions. Remember that from the 1980s? Act as if everybody around you, including yourself, has or may have COVID infection. So that means wash your hands a lot, 5 times a day at least. Carry some hand sanitizer, use it. Anytime you touch something that was touched by somebody else, use the hand sanitizer. Give others space. Outside, inside, whatever. At least 6 feet. CDC updated their guidelines. Those droplets travel farther than 6 feet, especially when indoors. If you do have to be indoors with people you don't live with, make sure there's plenty of ventilation. Open the windows wide, put on a sweater. It's worth it. And be outside as much as you can, but also wear a mask, because if you're outside shouting, singing, exercising, even if there's 6 feet or more, you're still at risk. That mask is going to really make a difference. Now, while you're wearing that mask, talk to people about the election. Make sure they're registered. Make sure they've checked their registration. Make sure they have a plan on how to vote. Do they know if they're going to do absentee ballots? Do they know how and when that ballot's going to come? Do they know where they're going to drop it off? If you know anybody who is not planning to vote, try to talk some sense into them. But don't do it by telling them, hey, you're stupid, you need to vote. Help them understand what it means to you. Speak personally. Tell stories that will help people connect with your fear, your anger, your rage. Because people who don't vote are the ones who are going to tilt the scales this time around. That's what happened in 2016. We can't let that happen again.
So this tweet has been making the rounds, and it says more people in the White House have COVID-19 than Laos and Vietnam. I don't think that's exactly accurate, but directionally it is, right? But this is the problem. We have lost more people in this country to this than the Vietnam War, than World War II, and we are not doing anything about it. How can we plateau, Doug, at 40,000 new cases a day? A day. 1,000 people dying a day. Sorry.
It's not a plateau.
I don't think we're officially done with the first wave. So when people are saying second wave, how do you plateau this high? No other country is plateauing this high.
There actually was a dip in the April-May range, largely because of how well New York responded, where there was the largest concentration of cases. There was a dip, and then everywhere except the Northeast, things ticked up as soon as the summer began, and it has been mostly not the right direction since then. And as I said earlier, the latest data, it looks like 34 states are trending up, not down. It's terrible. It's everywhere, and that's the thing. We have widespread community infection, that's what the pandemic plans always aimed to prevent. We missed that. So now we have to do mitigation. We have to accept that it is everywhere and protect people from new infections best as we can.
Apollo says, I wish it wasn't so confusing. There was once a certainty to the world that's hard to perceive. You know what was one of the certain things? That the United States president cared more about America than he did about Russia. This president is a tool of Russia. I have behind me Russian dolls, in honor of the Russian interference. And by the way, Doug, I don't know if you and I have ever spoken about this. I grew up a little bit in the Soviet Union, so I know what it's like. I was a little kid there, but I have read, and I know that this is Putin's ultimate dream, the KGB officer, to have a president who's angrier at Americans than he is at Russians. Like, it doesn't, and this is not about the Russian people, this is about the Russian government and how Putin behaves and how he thinks. I mean, that is part of what we're all looking at. This is all just, I mean, so many comments are coming in here. Rajan says, I have this theory that if enough Trumpistas are catapulted into volcanoes, the curse of the virus will dissipate. Thank you, Doug, Sree, Rose, and Vandana. Blessings to you and your respective families. Allah, God, watch over you and protect us. Daryl says, I cannot believe we still have to tell people to remain safe. Rick says, thanks, Doug and Sree, for your public service. Thank you. Oh my God, 45 made a campaign video when he got back to the White House saying it's not so bad. Shameful, dangerous. He is crazy. What about all the enablers, Doug? What about every single person who works with him, who's letting this happen? Maureen says, what you can do, donate your time, make calls, sign up at joebiden.com/call. It's easy, high impact, and you can do it from home, or you can go to one of the other groups, Seed the Vote, They See Blue. Each one has a different strategy, and they're all pushing in the same direction. Please support Impact, iaimpact.org, that's doing amazing work. And by the way, I want to invite everybody to an important event that's happening this Saturday. If you want to understand what's going on in this country, the IA Impact Summit, there'll be 4 Congress, what do you say, congressional representatives there to, what's the right term, Doug, when you have
Congress.
4 members of Congress, thank you, will be there, and civil rights leaders like Vanita Gupta. Please check this out, iaimpact.org/summit, iaimpact.org/summit, and so much going on. And by the way, I want to show everyone that I've cared about public health, even though I was a journalist. Here's an interview I did. Doug, you can go to the side. This is the head of the World Health Organization in 1994. Look how much hair I had then. Sorry?
Was that interview being done in Yokohama at the AIDS conference?
This was actually at the population summit in Cairo in 94. And I mean, this is how much I was paying attention and how I've been paying attention to public health. So I don't claim to be an expert, but I care about this. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of doctors, as you know, on this show, and we're all still so much to learn. If Trump is a Matryoshka doll, is Putin inside of him? Rhetorical question. And fascinating program, says Jonathan, who's watched 208 of these programs. And we have someone in here who I won't even dignify, who's saying that what we're talking about is rubbish, because
see their facts. Find me a scientist with any kind of credibility who has a good alternate view, and I'll take it. Part of the problem is that the White House has been listening to Scott Atlas, who's got no scientific background. He's got a medical degree, but that doesn't mean he's got training as an epidemiologist or infection control person. He's a radiologist.
And we love radiologists because they do good things in their field. But this reminds me also of a Seinfeld joke, and you may have seen this episode where he says, you ever meet someone who recommends their doctor, who says, you've got to try my doctor, Jerry, he's the best, and he's always the best. And he says, well, someone's graduating at the bottom of these medical school classes. Not every doctor can be the best. We love our doctors. I respect all our healthcare workers, but we have doctors who are actively, the ones on Fox, the ones in the White House, who are actively sabotaging this country. And that should be unacceptable at every single level. And here we are, and we're all paying the price. And that's why I am so angry. And so I once again want to read this letter from a widow whose husband died from coronavirus, because I want you all to hear it, if you missed it before, about what this all means. Having lost my husband to COVID, let me just put this sort of thing. Having lost my husband to COVID and feeling the ripple effects that it has had on my entire family, I am appalled that this president is so callous and irresponsible to how many lives he's potentially jeopardizing by his actions. Lives will be forever changed by his narcissistic behavior, not just by him exposing people around him, but by sending out the wrong message to our country to not take this virus seriously. He is a disgrace not only to the office of the president, but to humanity and mankind. I mean, that's one widow, that's one family, 200,000 families. And don't forget what Dr. Gutierrez told me out of San Antonio, that in her rehab department, she has men and women from their 20s to their 70s learning to walk again, learning to breathe again, learning to eat again. And they're considered recovered from COVID, Doug. How is that? Why are they not in these statistics?
Because it just goes away.
Like magic, it'll just go away. The way that he used his hands like this, it'll go away by April, by Easter. You know, you cannot wish this away, as we are seeing. He's wishing it away up from himself now. And we're all paying this price. Doug Levy, show me your book again. We didn't get a chance to talk about it enough. This is a book, you wrote this within the first 2 months of coronavirus, the Communications Handbook for Coronavirus. Every governor, every president in the world needs to read it, because how you communicate affects all the good work Doug wrote in the book that was done by medical science and everyone else can be undermined by a bad actor communicating badly. And that's what we're seeing now. And we're paying the price. Please, everyone, follow his wonderful newsletter, douglevy.substack.com. douglevy.substack.com. Tell us what you get for reading it.
Most Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and sometimes on the other days, I put together, I try to get it down to the 3 most important stories, although a lot of days it's more like 4 or 5 or more. But I try to focus on the stories that actually matter. So not so much the he said, she said stuff, but actually, you know, what's the new scientific information? What's the epidemiology coming out of Europe? And what are we learning? And how can we take that information and apply it to what's happening here so we make better decisions for ourselves, our companies, our communities, our nation?
Thank you. And you can get it by going to douglevy.substack.com. Follow him on Twitter at SFDoug. And Doug is a dear friend. We've lost him to California. He's gone back. He was here for a few years, but California in his heart. Tell us about the fires. Are we going to be okay? Are you all going to be okay? Or will it just continue?
We're praying for rain, but you know, we're going to have the fires that are burning now are going to keep burning for a couple of weeks. And some of the communities that were in the line of fire literally last week are now probably okay, and some people are being allowed to go home. But to the north of the Napa Valley toward Lake County, there's new evacuations and new threats. It only takes a little bit of wind to kick things up again. And we have very, low humidity, everything's dry. Even where I live, there's very high fire danger because it only takes a stray cigarette or a spark from whatever to really do a lot of damage very fast.
I'd also say that because we've been distracted by everything happening in coronavirus, we're not paying enough attention there. And I think in the East, we think of fires as if they're like hurricanes. They'll come and they'll go. There's nothing needs to happen. In fact, thousands of men and women are laying their lives on the they're putting their lives at risk, putting out the fires by hand. Right? This is hand-to-hand combat. But hurricanes are not like that. So we just cover the hurricanes. They blow over. They do their damage. But this is different. Men and women have to stand there and fight the fires for everyone to be safe. And that's, I think, almost a lesson for how we should be fighting this virus. All of us together. Instead, we are not doing that with this virus. Thank you, Doug. We'll let you go. You're an awesome friend. I can't wait to see you either in New York or in California. Not till next year, easily till March, April. We don't know.
It's true.
And please stay safe. And thank you. I am so grateful to you. I really, really mean it. I appreciate it. You helped people today. I know you did. You helped me today. And it means so much to me. And thank you. Linda says, thank you for tonight's show. Powerful venting. Stay safe. Okay, I've not been showing the trolls, but let me show you a troll in a different way. Laurentine Toady, first of all, what a name, is on LinkedIn. I'm not expecting the president to give medical advice. If you do, it's your problem. What do you say to that?
The problem with that is he is the president. So he is the person whose responsibility is to tell Americans the truth, what we need to do to stay safe. And he swore an oath to protect and defend the United States of America. By contradicting the scientists and the doctors, he is, if he was just not talking, that would probably be okay. But he is specifically undermining the health messages. That's the problem.
Thank you. So well said. Thank you, Doug and Sree, for tonight. Thank you so much for a great show. Everyone who joined late, as soon as this is over, it'll rerun and you can watch. Tag your friends, someone who would benefit from this, someone who would learn something from this. Please tag them on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. They can watch afterwards. We need to change. We need to step up. Otherwise, if we're all like this, we'll have a live show the night of the election, folks. I want everyone to watch CNN. I'll keep my eye there, but we'll be talking. Maybe, Doug, you'll also join us that night. If it goes the way it did in 2016, it's not that everything is equal. Do you remember everyone who said, oh, there's no difference between Al Gore and George W. Bush? Do you remember that? And now look at the world where it is today and we don't have another planet. There's no plan B. There's no planet B for us to go to. Even our richest, most successful billionaires are not going to get to go live on another planet. And they also continue to many of them enable this president and this horrible, horrible situation. Maureen says, I've known you for years, Sree, and I know how you've been careful about staying away from politics. It really means a lot to me that you're speaking out in this way. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you for saying that. With Trump, the ruble stops somewhere. It stops elsewhere. Again, we're making fun. If Trump wins, I'm praying for an asteroid strike. Well, what can you do? All right. Thank you, Doug. I truly appreciate you. Thank you. Just one of so many friends who have helped and supported the show, and you have helped and supported the show. We're on every single night, sometimes during the day, but always at 9 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow we have a show on climate change, so please join us and watch that with us. I know you will benefit, as I will, from that episode. I also want to do something that we do on this show whenever we can. I asked Kimberly Crenshaw, the great Columbia Law School professor who coined the term intersectionality. I asked her, what can we do to help Black folks in this country? And she said, say their name. So I'm going to do that right now. Here is a Time magazine cover of Titus Kaffir's painting. And on the right, you're seeing a photo of a young Larcinia Floyd with her son, George. And she would die 2 years almost to the day that he would be killed on camera in Minneapolis. They are now buried together in Houston. And now I will say their names. Thank you for joining me in saying their names. I will start here. Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jerame Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, Samuel DuBose, Janet Wilson, Callin Rockmore, Alton Sterling, Philando Castillo, Joseph Mann, Terrence Crutcher, Chad Robertson, Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stefan Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. And those are not all the names. Those are not even all the names after the killing of George Floyd, but we say them whenever we can. And we thank all of you for letting me say those names and being there with me as I said their names. Thank you for being here. You can subscribe on YouTube to my channel, and that's one way to keep up with my show. Please follow me on Twitter and YouTube, and at Twitter at Sree, YouTube and Instagram is SreeNet. And another way to keep in touch is by catching this QR code. It'll send you a gentle WhatsApp alert every time I'm live. It is not a WhatsApp group, just a WhatsApp alert. And I hope you will sign up for it. And please tell me how we can work together. We have a show every single night. We have a platform. We're blessed with it. What can we do to get the word out about saving this country and saving this planet? Thank you very much, everyone. I'm super grateful to all of you. Let's look at some of the other comments here. Thank you for being here, sharing your anger about this particular day. It felt overwhelming here too. I haven't been around a lot, but I'm grateful for the show. Thank you all involved in it. Rajan, thank you. Rajan has built an incredible list of people who've been killed by white supremacy, and I want to be going back to reading that list as well. It's so tragic in so many ways. Thank you, everybody. And remember, be angry and vote. What Michelle Obama said, don't boo, vote. Boo and vote.